Two of my favorite people in Congress, of some of our good friends in Congress, have teamed up. Ron DeSantis, our local congressman, as well as Matt Salmon, our good friend from Arizona. They've come up with what will be the 28th Amendment. And what should have been probably done years ago, these two men are stepping up saying, let's make this happen. A constitutional amendment to hold Washington accountable. It's a huge story. To talk about it, Congressman Ron DeSantis joins us live today on WNDB. Congressman, welcome back. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you. This is perfect. What's the likelihood you can make this happen?
Well, here's the thing. We've already gotten a huge positive response from our colleagues, and we're going to continue to build on that. We are going to bring it on the Constitution Subcommittee and the Judiciary Committee, have a hearing. I think we can mark it up. And if we keep building, all we need to do is get a vote in the House because, how can you justify voting against the idea that Congress should not be able to exempt themselves from burdens that they're placing on other people? I mean, it's an untenable position. Now, there may be some people who say, forget it, I'm not voting for that. But I think most members of Congress are going to look at that, and their constituents are going to look at that and say, yeah. And so, it's interesting. Throughout the years, Congress they exempted themselves from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. This is one of the most landmark pieces of legislation. And, of course, now we're bracing with these rumors that there are going to be these special carve-outs that members give themselves and their staffs to deal with the increased health care costs under the health care law. And that's just not acceptable. And so we are going to work it. And look, I can't say what will happen in the Senate, but I think we're going to get a lot of folks that will want to do it. And I think it'll be bipartisan because with Congress's approval rating at 9%, part of it is some people don't like some of the policies that come out on either side of the aisle. But part of it is people just have a sense that Washington is this society unto itself. They kind of live by their own set of rules, and it's kind of the rest of the people out there living under all these people, and that is absolutely not what the Founding Fathers intended. So we're trying to reestablish constitutional government.
Well, so that there's been many things that you've been concerned about that Congress excludes themselves from. Was there a single issue toward the end when you and Matt got together that said, hey, you know what, it's time to make this happen? Something that pushed you forward?
Well, there was a great article in the Wall Street Journal several months ago about Congress did kind of a last-minute change to the Stock Act, which was done to basically prohibit members of Congress for using their insider political knowledge to trade in stocks, which would be, if you did that in the private sector, it would be obviously a criminal offense. And this was done after everyone had gone home. They voice voted it. And so people are just saying, look, we need to have a 28th Amendment saying Congress can't be doing this kind of stuff. And then when we started to see reports about leaders in both parties huddling to try to figure out a way around Obamacare for members and their staffs, Matt and I were like, oh, we cannot do this. And it's a difference between, do you believe that people who come up here are part of a ruling class who are separate and distinct from the American people? I don't. The Founding Fathers didn't. Instead, we are embracing a view, which I think most Americans want, that people who get elected and go up are servants of the people, and we're not any different. We've been given a certain amount of trust to go up here and make decisions on legislation, but we're no different from anybody else who's an American citizen.
Is a school of thought that you and Congressman Salmon have is that, we get this thing to a vote, we pass this in the House, the Senate will be shamed into having to take up the issue because they're not going to want to look bad to their statewide constituents and say, well, the House passed it, why didn't you guys take it up? They'll be forced into it, in other words. Do you think?
Well, I hope, but what I found up here is that there's a double standard in terms of if the House passes something, the media tends not to pressure the Senate to do anything about what we do. They say, oh, it's just dead. Senate doesn't want it. The Senate does something, then there's all this attention, media attention. Oh, when are you going to deal with this or that? So there is a double standard. So we'll have to see how it's going to go. This is going to be probably. It's not going to happen overnight. We're going to build support amongst our colleagues, and we do want to bring it to that subcommittee, and I think that'll be good. But the good thing is, and people say, well, what can I do? People in our district, for example, say, what can I do? Well, obviously I'm supporting it, so you don't have to lobby me. But if you know other people in other districts, family members or whatever, tell them, have them write into their congressman, have them go to a town hall meeting. If you stand up and look your member of Congress in the eye and say, there's a constitutional amendment saying Congress can't exempt themselves from laws they impose on other people, you should support it. What's your position? I mean, most people are probably going to have to be favorably inclined to that, and so that kind of grassroots pressure, it can really work when you have an issue that, if you polled it, we haven't polled this amendment, but there was a poll done on whether members of Congress should be able to exempt themselves from the health care law, and it was 98-2 saying they shouldn't, and you'd be hard pressed to find 98-2 for any issue.
I know that it's early, but I'm wondering, is Mr. Micah Warm to the idea as part of the Florida delegation?
Well, he's someone on my list to talk to. I wasn't able to. I didn't see him today, but we'll definitely work with him on that. I think he will. I mean, he's on oversight government reform with me, and he's been somebody who wants to hold government accountable, and so I think holding us accountable is fits right in with that.
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when it came out, this disturbing story the other day about how the Department of Homeland Security lost track of all these people. I thought to myself, Congressman DeSantis is going to blow a gasket when he hears this.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that you start to get numb to some of this stuff. I mean, it is just par for the course, one thing after another. The standards and the expectations are just so low, and there's so much mismanagement. It's really, really frustrating. And then the scope and the breadth of the bureaucracy. It's like, you start focusing on one part, then you got some part way on the other side you got to deal with, and you're running back and forth. So we have our hands full on oversight. There's no doubt about that.
Has the Speaker indicated that there's likely to be some sort of vote in October on immigration, or do I have that wrong?
No, he hasn't. I mean, what he has said is that the Senate bill is dead in the House. There's just not enough support. One reason, incidentally, is because it's not constitutional. The Constitution requires all bills that raise revenue to originate in the House. It's Article 1, and the reason why the founders wanted that is because the members of the House are elected every 2 years. They're the closest to the people. If they're raising revenue, then you can vote them out if you don't like that. Well, this bill originated in the Senate, and so Harry Reid still hasn't even sent it to the House, because if he does, I think he knows we'll blue slip it and send it back. And so we've done a judiciary, we did a bill for high-skilled visa reform. We think that can be pro-growth. We did a bill for E-Verify. We did a bill for a modern legal agriculture guest worker program, and then we did a bill for interior enforcement. In other words, whatever laws we decide on, government has to actually enforce them. You can't do what this administration, and quite frankly what the Bush administration did, is just decide they don't really want to enforce any or some of the laws. So we have kind of that package, and we think those are all bills that the American public would overwhelmingly support. The problem is people in the Senate and the White House have said, it's a comprehensive 1,200-page approach or bust, so they won't even consider some of the individual bills. So if they hold that to that position, it's going to be difficult to see what happens. And September, October, we have the government funding bill and the debt limit, so that's going to take up a lot of time. And there's other issues in the hopper as well. So he has not said there will be a vote, and I don't know exactly what the way forward will be. We've done our work on judiciary. We believe in a step-by-step approach, but we also do not want to embrace a Senate bill that's 1,200 pages that does legalization first and promises enforcement later, and we know there's so many waivers in that bill that Napolitano or whoever succeeds her will have the ability to simply waive most of the requirements.
Mindful of the time, I'll make this so that you make your next appointment on time. But let me ask you, I know constituents want to know, and I know you're very sensitive to this, in light of all this news that's come out about the IRS holding off on granting tax-exempt status to worthy organizations and individuals, and then targeting Tea Party people. Congressman DeSantis, do you think anything will be done to discourage this type of thing from happening anymore?
We're actually, we've done some legislation here in the House. We have a great bill tomorrow, which is Keep the IRS Off Your Health Care Act. And the idea is we've seen what the IRS has done with vetting these political groups. Do you really want the IRS involved as being the main implementer of this health care law where they're going to have access to all of your medical records potentially? There's huge privacy concerns. There's huge individual freedom concerns. So our bill says, it completely cuts the IRS out of health care. In terms of holding people accountable, Lois Lerner, she took the Fifth Amendment before our committee. We voted that she waived her right because she basically told her side of the story, then refused to answer questions. So she's going to have to decide whether she's going to testify or else face potential contempt of Congress. But it's frustrating throughout this whole process, not one person in the entire organization has been fired for this. And people in Washington have tried to say it was just rogue agents in Cincinnati. We've brought them up to Washington, and they were directed to route all the conservative groups' applications to Washington by people like Lois Lerner to the IRS chief counsel. So it definitely emanated from Washington. We're going to stay on it, but you need to hold people individually accountable, and then we need to obviously reform, and so keep the IRS off your health care. Yeah. We are whacking the IRS's budget, and we think that those are appropriate responses.
Exit question. Does it bother you that we're, a year later here, we still don't know the perpetrators? We don't have them in custody for what happened in Benghazi. I know you've been very vocal on this. The FBI and other intelligence sources can't seem to find the perpetrators, but CNN could get an interview with one of the people who knew them. What about that? Do you think we'll ever get the answer?
Well, we're going to try. I mean, the administration says that's a phony scandal when you have 4 Americans die in the line of duty. We still don't have answers about what response was provided that night. Why wasn't there help at least marshaled, much less make it there? We don't know. We don't know where the president was. It is extremely frustrating because the president, and I've supported him, he's gone after a lot of terrorists in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Here we have 4 Americans killed by terrorists. We have CNN interviewing the main suspects, and yet we're not doing anything. And I asked Holder this months ago, and he said, oh, well, I'm in charge of this. We're going to bring them to justice. Just stay tuned. And nothing has happened in the several months since this has happened. And I think they just want it to go away. They think that if they don't do anything, that people will forget about it. But the Americans aren't going to forget about it, because when you are willing to go in harm's way on behalf of the country, Americans believe your back. We should get your back. And if we don't do that, we need to know why. And we need to seek justice against people who commit these types of acts. So we're continuing. We're doing a lot behind the scenes. I hope that we'll have another hearing in September so the American people get even more information.
Congressman Ron DeSantis, live from the nation's capital on WNDB. Congressman, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Y'all take care.